wabarakatuh, and good evening to all audience and viewer from Masa University Facebook page and Masa University YouTube channels. Together with me in this evening is a great speaker with great experience in engineering field. First of all, before we begin, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. Before the webinar begins, allow me to introduce the speaker backgrounds. TS Dr. Muhammad Hanif bin Ramli obtained his bachelor degree in biomedical engineering from University Technology Malaysia, UTM. He then pursued his PhD at the same university. His PhD work was on biomechanical analysis of ankle external fixator. He is currently employed as senior lecturer at the Department of Biomedical Engineering and Health Science, Faculty of Electrical Engineering, UTM. His special fields of interest include biomechanics, biomaterials, rehabilitation engineering, biomedical design, prosthetics, and orthotics. At this moment, he received 34 research grants as both principal investigator and member, supervised 23 postgraduate students, master and PhD as main and co-supervisor, published a total of 71 articles in WOS and Scopus Index Journal, with a cumulative citation and H index of 451 and 12 respectively. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the speaker to deliver the presentation. All right, Dr. Hanif, the floor is yours.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta taj'al hazna idza fi'ta sahla. First of all, thank you so very much to the organizer of this session from Masa University and Madam Zuliana as a moderator. And thank you again for inviting me for this talk and sharing session. So, and I would like to welcome to everyone who are watching online through Facebook and YouTube channel of Masa University. Thank you for your interest to maybe get some knowledge from me regarding what I have done in UTM, especially on the field of biomechanics and prosthetic and orthotics. So before we go further, let me brief about our topic for today. So the topic for today is prosthetics and orthotic devices development through digital manufacturing process. So I will be sharing to you, to all of you, the process, the current process that we utilize in UTM, especially in UTM, in order to develop medical devices, specifically on the prosthetic and orthotic through a digital manufacturing process. So we will go further. Okay, this is the presentation outlines. I will introduce myself first, okay, and then I will talk about the history of prosthetics and orthotics, and normally we call it PO. And I will brief about the type of PO, and then we will go through on the PO trend, and then conventional method, and we will comparing about the these two methods, which is conventional and digitalization, and then of course we will go through some of the prices for the prosthetic legs, so the audience can understand and get some idea on the price of the prosthetic leg in Malaysia. And then I will explain about our first case study that we conducted previously, and then second case study. And also I will introduce some other engineering study related to PO, prosthetic and orthotic, and the research findings that we are got it from the experiment and simulation works. So in the end of the talk, I will be concluding the talk, and also I will share some success story from our side. So again, thank you so very much to Masa University for inviting me to this session. Okay, so this is very good poster actually. Thank you again for providing and also preparing this poster. And then I will introduce myself first. So again, my name is Muhammad Hanif bin Ramli. This is my education background. I obtained my PhD in biomedical engineering from UTM in 2015. And before I obtained my PhD, I did my research attachment in UPM Madrid, Spain in 2014. And then my first degree was on biomedical engineering field. I obtained it from UTM in 2012. So I did research attachment in Germany in 2011. So this is my working experience. I'm now as a senior lecturer since 2016 until now. And during my service in UTM, I did my another industry attachment with 3D Jensen Bahat, where we develop many medical devices. And my project during the attachment is on the prosthetic development. And then before I become the senior lecturer, I did my postdoctorate researcher. So I used to be a postdoctorate researcher in UKM back in 2006, 16. And then I was the coordinator, sales coordinator in Eurochair, Senam Berhad. So this is my research interest. So my research interest is focusing on biomechanics, which is a finite elements, biomedical modeling, and so on. And biomaterial, we develop the new material, new biodegradable material for the implant application, and then rehabilitation that specialize on the prosthetic and orthotic, and also my research interest in on biomedical design. Okay, so I will talk about the history of prosthetic orthotic first before we go further about the development process. So it is Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution. It was conducted by Egyptian mummy. So the PO actually was developed by some researcher back in 3,000 years ago. So basically, they made from wood and leather, which is available from the existing environment. So it is very easy to get these resources instead of having like polymer, rubber in the current situation in this century. They only use the wood, okay, the leather to develop the prosthetic. This is the example of the prosthetic leg during that time, okay, using the wood and leather. And after that, some revolution of PO has happened, where this is during the US Civil War and also the World Wars. So there is some medical doctors or orthopedic surgeon, namely as Dr. Ambrose Pray, started in 1500, okay, and this is the guy who are creating the prosthetic leg back in 15th centuries. And then he was the first to introduce prosthetic hand and leg during the current centuries, okay. And then there is an example of the prosthetic hand, and which is a very old version. You can see, I think this one made from wood and also stainless steel. Okay, so overview about the prosthetic leg and orthotics. Sorry, prosthetic and orthotics. So if we differentiate between prosthetic and orthotic, there are some difference between both. Okay, so the prosthetic can be defined as a artificial body part to replace the missing body. So prosthetic is the new body part. So in order to replace the missing limb, we have to develop the prosthetic. So meanwhile, for the orthotics, it is an artificial support or brace for the limbs. It is only for a support system. It's not replacing the missing limb. It only can be a brace or support. For example, to support the joints of ankle and so on. Okay, so for the prosthetic, we do have two different kind of prosthetic. The first one is active. The second one is passive. The active one is normally having some electrical parts, okay, and some other product having some sensors or EMG to detect the muscle contraction and so on. That one is active prosthetic leg. Okay, and the example of passive prosthetic. And this one is particularly for the prosthetic leg. It is only a passive without other motorized system, without any electrical electronic part, which is very mechanical design. Okay, so there are some different in terms of the mechanism between the active and passive. Okay, maybe I will share you the differences. And then there is the example of the prosthetic hand. Okay, and then there is another example of the active prosthetic hand. Okay, combining all the electronic electrical part and also the structure made from polymer metal and so on. And for the orthotics, this is somehow for the support system. For example, to support ankle joint after injury, for example, and in order to some cases, in order to give treatment to the patient like a cerebral palsy, for example, the medical doctor will put the orthotics or brace onto the ankle joint. Okay, this is an example of knee orthotics. And then there is another example orthotic, which is for the wrist joint. And in terms of material, the previous one, the conventional one, the material made of a plaster of Paris, POP, and some of them made from steel and polymer. And then in terms of price, so prosthetic can be up to 20,000 ringgit. It started from 5,000 ringgit. The cheapest one is 5,000, around 5,000 ringgit. And orthotic is the maybe more cheaper than the prosthetic, which is can be getting around 200 and above. Okay, we move forward about the type of prosthetic and orthotic. There are two main types of prosthetic leg. So we call it transtibial, which is below knee, okay, and then transfemoral, which is above knee. Okay, so this is the illustration to illustrate the below knee amputation together with the transtibial prosthetic leg. So this is the tibial location, okay, and then this is the transtibial prosthetic leg. And then the other illustration for the above knee amputation, where the amputation or stump above the knee joint. Okay, so for the prosthetic, we call it transfemoral. Okay, transfemoral because the socket is located at the femur bone. Okay, for this one, the socket is located at the tibia bone, so that's why we call it transtibial, and this one is transfemoral. Okay, we move forward to the mechanism between the passive and active prosthetic. So as I mentioned before, there are two different mechanisms. The first one is passive, which is not having any electrical or electronic or any other sensors embedded into the prosthetic leg. But for active, if you can see here, there are many motorized system, okay, to control the ankle joint, for example, okay, to give some forces, okay, from coming from the motor, and also the motor getting some energy from the battery, for example. So this is the differences between active and passive. Okay, we move forward to the hand prosthetic. So there are two different prosthetic hand, which is transhumeral, which is located at the humerus bone, and normal above elbow. And then we do have a transradial, which is below elbow. Okay, and then there is the example of the transhumeral prosthetic hand, which is located at this region, the socket at the humerus bone, at the near to the shoulder. Okay, and then we do have the transradial, which is the socket here, located at the radial or radius bone. Okay, so same goes to the prosthetic hand. There are two different mechanisms. The first one is passive, and the second one is active. So passive one, again, there is no electrical and electronic parts, which is only involving mechanical parts. So the power system is coming from the body, okay, not from the motor or the electrical. Okay, once the patient wearing the prosthetic hand, so in order to move the elbow, for example, they have to push some other angle, okay, to make sure that the elbow is moving. So normally we'll call it body empowerment lah. And then this one is active one, which is involving many electrical parts, including sensors, for example, wires, motorized, motor and battery. And then several type of orthotics. So this one is for the ankle foot. Okay, you can see there's some region that cover the tibia bone and also the ankle foot region. And then this is the knee joint. We cover at the knee joint, including the the femur and also the tibia part. And then there is the example of pelvic, where these orthotics or brace can cover the pelvic region, and sometimes it is also useful for the hip support. Okay, if the patient having a hip surgery or hip problem, they have to get this brace. And then there is the spine orthotics. So this one is used to cover the spine bone. Okay, depending on the severity of the patient. If the spine having problem at this region, so the brace will be placed at this region. And then we do have the shoulder, okay, for the shoulder joint like this way, okay. And then this elbow, for example. And then there is the wrist orthotics, and also the last one is for the neck. So basically, the orthotic medical devices is only for support, not for replacement. Okay, to support the injury joint, for example. For example, for the cases that happen in the knee joint, normally happen in the football, for the football players. So they got the ACL injury and so on. And then the first treatment or the first support is the knee braces lah. And normally, the layman call it braces. Okay, so the medicine terminology, we call it orthotics. Okay, so this is an example of orthotics. And then I will explain about the difference between P and O. So in terms of mechanism, as I mentioned before, prosthetic is a replacement, okay, to replace the missing body. And orthotics is a support system, which is to support joint in order to wait for the healing process to be taken. And then for the wearing time, prosthetic always, because some cases the amputee patient need to have a prosthetic leg, for example, to walk, to run, and to do some daily activities. Okay, but for the orthotic, it is only for a temporary. Okay, not always to be used. Maybe some cases is waiting for the healing process to be done. Okay, and then after healing process taking into the place, then they are not wearing the orthotic anymore. So the price for the prosthetic is high because there are many components involved, but the orthotic is low price because there are some only elements that involved in the design and so on. Okay, we go to market trend. If you can see here, the trend, the bar chart here, coming from 2016 until 2028. So we can see the trend is increasing. Okay, starting from 2016, it can up to 2 billion USD. Okay, and then increasing to 0.07 in 2070, and it is expected that the trend will be increasing over the year. Okay, and then research trend, if you can see here, I put the keyword of the prosthetic in the search engine. We can see that since 18th centuries, the trend is increasing, so we can know that the demand is there. Okay, and then also the awareness to give the better treatment for the rehabilitation and to the patient is better than before. Okay, so many researchers doing research. Okay, and then many company provide the solution to the client and so on. So I pick one, the highest one, which is in 2020. So there are 4,000 articles were published. Okay, and then for the orthotic, the keyword is orthotic. It is also showing the increasing trend starting from 1945. Okay, and then I picked the highest one, which is in 2019. The article will publish a total of 1,000 articles. And then if I narrow down the searching, I put the prosthetic final element. Okay, mostly for the mechanical analysis. The trend is also increasing, starting from 1975 until now. So the highest one in 2020, where the article was 67 published. Okay, so in overview, so we can see that research trend is going on, okay, and keep increasing, to meaning that there are some demand available from there, okay, to make sure that we provide the best solution for the patient. Okay, for the conventional method, this is the thing that I want to show you on how we develop the prosthetic leg between the conventional and also the digital method. So this is the conventional one, which is including this step, okay, casting. Okay, so this is the stump region where the socket will be developed from here. The first one we wrapping with the plastic, and then we marking with some region like patella, okay, the diameter and so on. And then we wrapping again with the plaster of Paris, which will be cured later on. Okay, after 10 minutes until 20 minutes, the plaster of Paris will be cured, and then we have to check where is the patella region. So this is the thumb finger to check the patella position, and then after that we will get the cast, or we call it mold, okay, after the pop is cured. And then we have the positive mold, we bring it into the lab, and then we have to again put some markers to determine where is the patella, where is the ligament and so on. And then we have to again measure to make sure that the size is correct and fitting with the patient condition. And then we do some rectification, okay, and then this is the thing that the tedious work should be done, okay, in order to develop the socket, where we have to put the material in oven, okay, for the melting procedure. And then we do some thermoforming process, and then in the end we will get the socket like this one. Okay, so after we have the socket, then we do some assembly, combining all parts. For example, the pylon, okay, the socket, and then the adapter and also the foot. And some other cases, maybe the client need to have more cosmetic view, aesthetic view. So we have to depending on the client as well. Okay, for the digitalization method, which is we use the 3D printing technology. And before that, we have to get some data in order to design the socket. So this method include this step, okay, including the 3D scanning. Okay, the example where the researcher scanning the stump using the 3D scanner. So normal condition, we have to put uh, the padding on the stump, okay, to make sure that there are some layer, another layer, okay, not only direct on the skin, but we have to put some padding to make sure that the socket is not really fit, it's not really tight to the skin, okay. So and then once you have the data from the 3D scanner, so the process of 3D designing is taking place, where we import the data from the scanner into the computer-aided design software, CAD software. There are many available software in the market like Mesh Mixer, SolidWorks, okay, Trimatics, and many more. So in my case, I use several software like Trimatic, SolidWorks, Mesh Mixer, Fusion 360. So it is also depending on the skill and also the tools that available from the software itself. And then once we have design, the final design of the socket, then we print out the socket using the 3D printer, and we convert the 3D model into the G code using the slicer software. And then in the end of the day, we will get the socket, the 3D printed socket. And then if some cases where the rectification should be done in order to make the surface smooth, so we have to rectify the smooth, do some polishing, for example, put some cements in order to make it more strong, okay, and then assembly with the other part like pylon and also adapter and foot. Okay, do some alignment, which is we have to try with the patient, and also some other cases they are requesting us to make sure that the prosthetic is look better, which is having a good aesthetic view. Okay, so I will introduce about the additive manufacturing first before I go further about the project or product development. Okay, what is additive manufacturing? It is a process of joining materials to make objects from 3D model data. Okay, usually layer upon layer as opposed to subtractive manufacturing methodologies such as traditional machining. Okay, so the printer itself will be printing layer by layer. Okay, after finish one layer, the bag will be going up or down in order the nozzle in order to allow the nozzle to printing another layer. And then for another naming or another name of the AM is rapid prototyping. Okay, this term was used in the beginning of the professional use of the technology because the main application was the manufacturing of prototype and mock-ups and also sample part. But right now, the current trend of the additive manufacturing is no longer for prototype only. So there are some cases that we are fully utilize the 3D printer to develop the end product. So it is depending on the application. So in my case, I did my research attachment or industry attachment in 3D gens. So 3D gens provide many solutions to the patient like patient specific design or patient specific implant. So we can develop the implant based on the patient condition or geometry. So different patient, different person having different geometry of bone. So we come up with this method to develop a suitable implant for that particular patient. And today known as additive manufacturing or AM or normal we call it 3D printing lah. Of course, the terminology is different, but the meaning is same. Okay, so in terms of revenues per industry, you can see here there are many industry, not only biomedical. Okay, there are many industry that use 3D printer to develop the prototype and even to develop the product. One of them is electronic industry. So you can see there are many revenues there. 370 millions euro in 2012 lah. This data is coming from 2012. So I believe in this year is going or increasing a bit. Okay, and then for the automotive 320 millions, and then for medical or dental application you can see this is the highest one, which is 380 millions as compared to other industry. So you can see that the medical industry is not only using the conventional, but at the moment they are trying to invest more in additive manufacturing to provide a best solution for the patient. Okay, and then aerospace, civil, and others industry. Okay, just a quick overview about the price. Maybe some of you may not know about the price of prosthetic leg. Okay, so the basic one it can starting from 5,000. Okay, so the cheapest one is 5,000. It is difficult if the patient who are coming from B40, for example, to get the prosthetic leg. Okay, it is a very expensive. Not all afford to buy. Okay, and then for the active one is more expensive because it is including some other components like motor, battery, and so on. It started from 15,000 ringgit. And then for the passive transfemoral is more higher than tibia one because there are many parts here. The knee joint here, for example, the other part above part here. So the component is more than the tibia. So the cost is more than 10,000 ringgit. And then for the active femoral, of course, more 25,000 ringgit. It is like buying a new car actually. Okay, the price can get a new car. Okay, and then this is the expectation from us and also from the industry as well, where we believe that by having the 3D printed prosthetic leg, we can reduce the cost. So many patients can buy. Okay, many patients can get for it in the cheaper price. Okay, so we are expected to have this one below than 3,000 ringgit for the transtibial prosthetic leg. Okay, but somehow we have to do some more research. Okay, to make sure that the design is fully fit and also safe to be used by the patient. Okay, so I move forward to the next slide, which is our first case study. Okay, we do have some case study to be sharing to you. Okay, and then we have one male subject coming from Johor Bahru. So he is a male and then 50 years old. He got a right leg amputee due to accident, and he is the user since 2005. So from 2005 until 2020, he used the conventional prosthetic leg. So when I asked the subject, so why you don't buy a new prosthetic, and he replied he don't have enough money. So the previous one he get from the Baitumal, which is a donation from Baitumal. Okay, so to purchase new one, he cannot afford to buy a new. So what we do to this subject, we are trying to give a free prosthetic leg in two version, which is a conventional and also the 3D printed prosthetically. So this is the way where we scan the stump of the patient, okay, using the 3D scanner, and of course we put some padding on the stump, okay, to make sure that the socket is not really tight after we develop the 3D printed socket. And then again another information, loss of limb because of accident, and he need a new prosthetic leg. So if you can see, the condition of the existing prosthetic is very not in good condition, okay. And then somehow if we use the old version, maybe there are some other injury will be happen later on, for example spine, for example the skin irritation, and other complication. So that's why we have to provide a new, maybe around 5 years, they have to purchase a new prosthetic. And then what we did in our laboratory, we are comparing between two different methods. We use conventional and digitalization method. So this is the conventional way, where we use the POP, plaster of Paris, to wrapping up the stump, okay, and then we get the mold in order to develop the socket. And then we do some rectification, where we eliminate some material, okay, in the lab. And also we use thermoforming process, okay, to develop the socket made from polypropylene, okay. And then the is the way that we utilize the digital method. Again, we scan the stump using the 3D scanner, and then the is the design that we made using the CAD software, okay. So we use 3D printer to print out the socket, and before we giving to the patient, we trying to fit on the stump to make sure that there is no issue on the geometry, for example, tie and so on. Okay, so once we giving to the patient, we are trying to do some analysis to make sure that our design is convenient and also strong enough to be used by the patient. So we are comparing a conventional prosthetic leg, okay, and then we comparing with the 3D printing prosthetic leg. So the patient wearing the conventional and also 3D printed during the analysis. So we call it motion analysis, where the patient need to walk on the platform, okay, and then some cameras, there are 6 different cameras, will capture the motion. So in the end of the day, we can see where is the angle, what is the angle, okay, and the speed and so on. Okay, so I will play with the video so you can see how we ask the patient to walk on the platform.
2, 3, set.
Okay, so for this one, we do have a force plate, which is we can detect the force when the patient step on the plate. So again, I will repeat the video.
2, 3, set.
So the patient we step on the force plate, so we can get the force, how many force coming from the body. So for the next one is the patient that wearing the 3D printed prosthetic leg. So I will play the video. Okay, so again, the patient we step on the force plate, so to make sure that we getting the forces to be analyzed. Okay, I move forward to the next one.
2, 3,
Okay, this is what we found from the motion analysis study. Okay, so we are calculating the angle limb symmetry, sorry, joint angle limb symmetry. So limb symmetry index is actually useful to determine between the two legs, okay, right and left. So it is symmetry or not. So if not symmetry, then we can see that there is some problem with the prosthetic leg, or even the way that the patient use the prosthetic leg. So if you can see here, there is no significant difference, okay, between the the orange and also the blue. Okay, the orange for the conventional prosthetic leg, and the blue one is for the 3D printed prosthetic leg. So you can see there is no significant difference between those two in the pelvic thick in terms of the angle, okay, and sorry, in terms of the index, okay. And then for the hip abduction and adduction, okay, so there is also no significant difference within the range as well. Okay, hip flex also no significant, knee flexion and extension also having no significant difference. But for the knee varus and valgus, there are some others significant. So this one is the best findings that we have, where the 3D printed prosthetic leg having much more better than the conventional one. So how we determine the better one? Based on this percentage. So above 90% is better. So then if more than 300, it's not really symmetry, it is actually not symmetry. So that's why we claim that for the 3D printed here is better than the conventional. So for the other part, like ankle dorsal and plantar flexion, is also has no significant difference. And foot progression, for our case, 3D printed is not really promising as compared to the conventional way. So this one is our finding in terms of the kinematic study. And the other finding from the kinematic study or motion analysis is angle symmetry function. So normally we call it symmetry function, SF. So on how to define where is the good, where is not good, is on the value itself. Okay, near to zero is better. So most of the element here, pelvic thick, hip flexion, knee flexion, knee valgus and varus, ankle dorsal plantar flexion, okay, foot progression is almost zero, okay, but except this one, hip adduction and adduction, maybe some problem happen during the walking condition and so on. We have to identify later on, okay, based on our design. Okay, but to compare between the conventional, which is the green color, and 3D printed, which is the blue color, for the other parameter like this one, is having no significant. Okay, so we can say that the 3D printed prosthetic leg is also useful, also beneficial to the patient. And then we do some thermal imaging analysis where we capture the picture of the leg to see the temperature release from the skin. So there are some activities have been conducted. We ask the patient, the subject, to take rest around 1 minute, and then walking 5 minutes, and under the rest 1 minute, and then later on we capture the image. And this is also showing no significance between both prosthetic leg, conventional and also the 3D printed. If you can see here, this one is the conventional one, okay, conventional prosthetic leg. The maximum, I'm taking the average value, which is 25.5 degree, and the back one is 25.12 degrees Celsius. Okay, and then for this, which is 3D printed prosthetic leg, Okay, the average is somehow not much different. Okay, I can say that it is not significant different lah. So it is average in 25 degrees Celsius as well. Okay, for both front and back. Okay, if you can see here, there are some plotting. Okay, you can see the red is showing higher temperature than the other region. So the higher temperature normally happen or normally can see at the region of the joint lah, because the joint is having more movement compared to other regions. So there are some muscle, okay, muscle here to support and also to give some pressure to have the activities. And then there is the another findings from our simulation. We simulate the socket design using finite element analysis in different phases. For example, mid stance, okay, heel strike and two off condition with different forces exerted on the skin. And then there is the results. You can see here, if you can see, there is no failure happen to any parts, particularly on the socket itself. So the stress is not beyond the yield strength or is not getting fail. Okay, so we believe that the 3D printed or the material from the 3D printing filament is not having any problem if we use it for the prosthetic leg. Okay, and then the another finding or another version of findings where we compare the stress and the yield strength. So you can see the socket here made from ABS, which is the material for the 3D printed, and the maximum stress is only 3 megapascal compared to yield stress, which is 32. It's far away from the yield strength and also for the failure. Okay, and then another finding where we interview the subject using some questionnaire. So we ask a question to the subject. The first question that we asking about the noticeable weight to my prosthesis. So the answer is 3. So the scale is 1 until 5. So 5 meaning that the best, 1 is the worst. Okay, so for this case, the patient put 3, both conventional and 3D printed. Okay, and then the other question, socket reduce pain in my schedule. So it is also same, which is 3. It is a neutral. Okay, 3 and 3 for both one. Okay, a socket at comfort during walking. So this one we found the interesting findings where the subject put 4 for the 3D printed. So means that the subject is very a good condition when he used the 3D printed. And then this socket increase piston light motion, which is sometime when the stump inside the socket, it will be piston light like this one, so it will be loosening. So the patient put 4 for the conventional because it is easy to lose because it's not fit to the stump. But for our case, it is put 2. It's not really light piston light during the 3D printing process. And also able to walk faster with socket. Number 4 for the 3D printed. Okay, do not feel pressure. Okay, number 4 for the 3D printed. This socket decrease piston. This one is similar like the previous question, number 4. Okay, and then this socket increases comfort during standing. So the patient put the highest one, which is 5. Okay, so the patient feel that the socket is very comfort, okay, during the standing. And then the socket makes my prosthesis more rigid. Both are 3. Enable me to turn easier. Both are 3. Compresses my stump uniformly. Unfortunately, 2 for the conventional, 3 for the 3D printed. And then too hot, it is a very neutral. And this socket makes my knee harder to bend. Okay, the best thing is that the 3D printed one is the low one, which is it is not giving the harder to the patient to allow the patient to use the socket. Okay, and then the last one is I like using this socket with my prosthesis. So the patient put 4 for the 3D printed. So this is the results coming from the case study. So when we convert into the bar chart, we can see that the 3D printed in the blue color is much more positive compared to conventional. Okay, so conventional in neutral position, which is more to the neutral one, but the 3D printed, the highest one is positive, means that the acceptance from the users is higher for the 3D printed socket, okay, as compared to the conventional. Okay, we also test physically on our socket. Okay, we made the socket physically using 3D printer, and then we use a mock limb. We develop mock limb in the laboratory using the silicone rubber to represent the skin. Also, we use this synthetic bone, okay, to mimic the condition of leg. Okay, we compress until 1,000 Newton. Okay, and we found that there is no failure at all. Okay, from the zero load until 1,000 Newton load. So means that this socket can sustain up to 1,000 Newton, which is equivalent to 100 kilogram. Okay, so we actually varies the thickness of the socket, like 4 mm thickness with 40% infill. Okay, 6 mm thickness with a 20% infill. So from here we can see that there is no failure also. And then we increasing the infill density with the same thickness, 6 mm thickness, 30%, and also there is no failure. 40% infill is also no failure. Okay, so from this result, we can say that the socket itself can sustain the load up to 100 kilograms. So it is very strong for a patient having less than 100 kilogram. Okay, and then more study will be done after this, where we have to try in different condition, which is heel stride and also two off. Okay, and this condition is a vertical one, which is mimicking the standing condition. Okay, and this condition is mimicking the walking, which is the heel stride, also two. Okay, I will explain about our second case study, which is this one is particularly for the prosthetic hand. If you can see here, this CT data from the hospital, we get the data from the hospital. You can see there is something missing at the right side of the patient here. Okay, there is no humeral bone at the right side. Okay, so the patient actually need the cosmetic prosthetic hand. Okay, so one female subject, okay, 90 years old. Uh, she is a new user of the prosthetic. Okay, and then loss of limb because of an accident. And then how did we develop the prosthetic hand? Similar like before, we having this 3D model coming from the 3D scanner. Okay, we scan the patient body, including all parts, the upper part, upper joint, and then we develop the first one is socket. Okay, to make sure that the socket is fully fit to the skin, we taking the skin, okay, from the raw data, and we develop it. And then there is the humeral part, and then there is the radial part, there is the hand part. Okay, and then the same process, we use the digital manufacturing process, which is we use 3D printer to print out the design. Okay, and there is the prototype that we have developed in the lab. And then after that, once we have the first design, we try on the patient. We ask the patient to wear the prosthetic hand. Okay, and then we get some feedback from the patient, and then after that we do some improvement. Okay, so the design will be improved and getting better later on. And then this is the final design that we pass to the patient. So you can see the different here, and here is really different. Okay, this is the first version, and this is the new version of the prosthetic hand. And this is also passive prosthetic hand. It's not active. It is only useful for the aesthetic or cosmetic view. Okay, and then we do have a socket. We have the humeral part, radial part, and also hand. Okay, so we test on the patient physically. We ask the patient, is it okay or not? And then we get the feedback. and then we are trying our best to improvise the design later on. So I will show you when the patient wearing the prosthetic hand during the walking condition. So we can see the patient is like
goyang juga. Bagian elbow goyang.
Pusing.
Pusing Aliza, pusing.
Kalau mana?
Pusing. Goyang. Bagian kat situ. Tapi tak seteruk hari tu lah. Hari tu korang.
Pusing. Pusing.
Pusing.
Pusing terus.
Terus.
Sampai baju merah tu pusing balik kat sini.
Oh, bergoyang juga. Bagian elbow bergoyang.
Pusing. Tengok that lah. Saya okey je. It's okay daripada.
okay, this is the fitting test that we have conducted together with the medical doctor. We do have a medical doctor here, okay, physiotherapist actually, okay, a medical specialist on the rehabilitation lah. So she assists us, and she asks the condition of the patient when the patient use the prosthetic hand, because the patient is the first timer, okay, a new user of the prosthetic hand. So we have to get some feedback from the patient and also from the medical practitioners as well. Okay. And then I will maybe show something, share something about other engineering study related to prosthetic and orthotic. So this is the other study that we conducted in the laboratory. So we are trying to analyze different design of the foot. So if you can see here, the foot region is different between these two. Okay, the first one is really solid. Okay, and this one is only a structure, because some people may be having different interests. So we simulate this both condition, and then we found that the solid one is more practical compared to the truss structure like this one, because the stress is more higher here. Okay. And then the other study on the ankle foot orthosis, okay, same method where we scan the foot using 3D scanner, and we develop a series of the orthosis design having different design of holes, and then we do some finite element analysis, and then we simulate the stand condition, the heel strut condition, and also two off condition. And then we found that three of them are okay for von Mises stress parameter. Okay, you can see the stress is not really higher. The highest one is C, which is during the heel strike, 90 megapascal only. And then the other engineering research, the other engineering studies that we conducted is on the 3D printed wrist and orthosis. So again, we developed using CAD software. We developed this orthosis using CAD software, and then we print out the the orthosis, and then we simulate using finite element, and we try on the patient, on the subject, and again we ask the question, okay, to see the comfort perception from the subject, and also we conducted analysis on the thermal. Okay, we want to see that the material itself can allow the temperature release from skin or not. Okay, so you can see the difference here between the image from before and after wearing the orthosis. And then we do have knee orthosis for the knee joint, and then same goes to this one. We do finite element analysis. Okay, we found out that there are some highest stress at the joint, which can be later on improvised. Okay, in terms of design element. And then knee orthosis again. Sorry, this one is not knee. This one is ankle foot orthosis. Okay, we develop the foot, okay, using other material, okay, which is TPU, thermoplastic polyurethane, and we test on the subject. And then again, we do some thermal imaging analysis to check the skin problem or so on. And then same goes to here. We do final element analysis to check the strength and failure. Okay, so this is the conclusion, okay, for my sharing for today. Okay, if you comparing between the conventional and 3D printed, of course, in the future there are some demand to conduct more study to make sure that the data is sufficient to prove the 3D printed is very beneficial, and also maybe can be replacing the old conventional method. Okay, and then this is what I can conclude between the conventional and 3D printed. Conventional is high cost because we have to use many equipment, okay, like oven, thermoforming, and then it is including the waste. When you have the mold will no longer be used for next production because it is not similar to other patient condition. Okay, but for the 3D printed, it is a very low cost, and normally we use open source software, and it is very cheap equipment. It's not very high price lah compared to the conventional. Price for patient high, of course, low for the 3D printed. Kinematics, we found that no significant difference and comparably similar. Same goes to thermal analysis, no significant difference. For the finite element, we don't have any data for the conventional, but for the 3D printed one, once we have the data, we prove that the strength is promising. And then place of comfort satisfaction, more neutral and negative for the conventional and more positive for 3D printed. So this is the thing that we have to understand and aware that maybe some other patient like to use 3D printed instead of conventional. So compression testing not available for the conventional, but our case, the socket can sustain more than 1,000 Newton load. Okay, this is based on our data. So maybe I can share you some success story from our side, from UTM. Okay, so we develop the prosthetic leg to the patient, to the subject, and we give free to them. Okay, we do in our program, which is a corporate social responsibility program, where we get some money from others, and then we give free to the patient. This is for the prosthetic leg. Okay, and then this is for the prosthetic hand. Okay, we are collaborating with other institutions like UITM, Faculty of Mechanical, and also UITM Hospital located at Puncak Alam, which is Dr. Natiara from medical practitioners. And then with that, thank you so very much. This is my last slide. Thank you. I pass to Miss Zuli.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hanif, for the very informative and interesting talk. Hopefully, this presentation will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum and good evening.